Hey there, buds. Welcome to the channel. My name's Pirate. Recently, I've begun to write several different stories, Interloper and Human Trauma. I'm posting all of them onto Reddit, my Coffee, as well as onto my Royal Road. I've decided that I'm also going to be recording them for not posterity, but for individuals who want to actually go out and listen into the stories via audio format, and this is a good option for it. Anyways, without further ado, let us begin with our first story. Interloper. Section 1, Black Shores. The following is a transcript of a radio conversation between United States Army Rangers and their Tactical Operations Center, hereafter referred to as Sledgehammer and Baseplate, respectively. The radio transmissions occurred over the course of several hours on the 1st of July, 2015. Sledgehammer, this is Baseplate. Be prepared to receive traffic. Over. Baseplate, this is Sledgehammer. Ready to receive traffic. Over. Sledgehammer, ISR has spotted a large heat signature 15 clicks to your north-northwest at grid 240. 9666976. Break. You are being rerouted to investigate the site. Over. Roger that, Baseplate. Is there any more information on what we will be looking for on the site? Over. Negative. Currently, we are sending a UAV to perform ISR of the site, looking for any insurgent activity within the area. Break. We will update you if anything develops. Over. Understood, Baseplate. Redirecting to 24096666976. We'll continue to check in every 15 mics while en route. Over. Understood, Sledgehammer. Baseplate out. Radio checks between Baseplate and Sledgehammer went as normal for the next 2 hours. During that time, Sledgehammer was en route to the exterior of what is now known as the exclusion site. Transcription resumes when Sledgehammer is at a distance of approximately 1 kilometer from the exclusion site. Baseplate, this is Sledgehammer. We have eyes on the objective. Over. Roger that, Sledgehammer. What is it you are currently observing? Over. The site looks to be some kind of forest. We can't really tell what kind of trees from this far. Break. The place is as bright as the sun on thermals. Over. Understood, Sledgehammer. Continue to proceed closer to the objective and keep us updated every 5 minutes. Over. Wilco, Baseplate. Over. Sledgehammer then continued to proceed closer to the objective, regularly updating Baseplate on the state of the objective and what the team observed while en route. The only notable update was a gradual increase in temperature from approximately 10 degrees centigrade up to 25 degrees centigrade. Baseplate, we have proceeded to within 50 meters of the objective. Using white light, the trees are some kind of red vines. Over. Understood, Sledgehammer. Command wishes for you to circle the exterior of the site, looking for any inconsistencies in the vines. Over. Wilco, Baseplate. Over. Baseplate, this is Sledgehammer. We have set up a perimeter around the site and have checked the outside. It seems to be the same on all sides. Over. Understood, Sledgehammer. Stand by. Over. Approximately 10 minutes passed while Sledgehammer maintained a perimeter around the site. Sledgehammer, hire has follow-on orders. Can you send a squad into the forest? Over. Baseplate, are you sure about that? This seems off. All the guys are getting some strange feelings from this. Over. Yes, Sledgehammer. Command has requested that you travel into the objective and continue reporting. Over. The radio was keyed for transmitting, but nothing was heard for about 10 seconds. Baseplate, I'm not sending my guys into that thing. We have no idea what it is, and we're not equipped for Seaburn. Over. Negative, Sledgehammer. It has been determined that no Seaburn threats are on site, and you are to proceed into the forest. Over. Baseplate, I'm pulling my guys away from this thing. It's starting to make weird groaning noises. Several bursts of gunfire can be heard at this time. Sledgehammer, what just happened? Over. What the fuck? Baseplate, we're in contact. We just got attacked by something that lunged out of the forest. We put rounds at it, but the transmissions cut out at this time. This was the last transmission received from the platoon of U.S. Army Rangers during first contact with the site. When a follow-up team arrived at the location the following day, no remains of the Rangers could be found. Only several drag marks leading into the forest mentioned by the Rangers. Additionally, a large number of 5.56mm NATO casings were found, as well as evidence of high explosives being used in the area. When footage from the ISR was requested by the Security Council, the US DoD initially refused to release the footage. Following several more requests for the footage, they eventually released the video to the Council for review. Upon review, it was found that 30 minutes of footage beginning approximately 15 minutes before the Rangers' last transmission was corrupted. This corrupted data was not viewable nor recoverable. With the missing Ranger team, along with the proximity of the site to Kabul, Afghanistan, I hereby propose the Council moves forward with cordoning off the site and beginning observations to prevent any further losses. Signed, Leo Bell, Investigation Team Lead, Central Asian Division, United Nations. The bleach-white sands of the beach were warm and inviting, pulling years of aches and pains out of Zach's lanky frame. The beach stretched onward as far as the eye can see. The sounds of the waves rolling up onto the sands filled the air, the sloshing of the waves punctuated by the cawing of gulls floating high above on the steady breezes overhead. Gently pushing through the sounds of nature, Zach begins to hear the soft echoes of a voice. The voice sounds strangely close, yet not clear at all. The voice sounds as if whoever is speaking is muffled and distorted, like they are trying to speak to you through a pane of glass. Shifting himself upright, he looks around to figure out who is speaking. Zach does not see another soul anywhere on the beach as far as the eye can see. A few scuttling crabs, but no one who could be speaking. Listening closely to where the voice is coming from, he finds himself looking off into the forest that lines the edges of the beach, shifting his head back and forth slightly, trying to see if he can spot the source of the strange voice. The trees of the woods reached upward, dancing and shifting in the winds. Zach felt a strange gnawing at the back of his mind. Something about the voice compelled him towards it. Zach began following the compulsion to follow the voice. Long before he consciously made the choice, he was already wandering through the trees. As Zach continued into the forest, walking over logs, through mud, and over rocks, the forest continued to grow darker, and the bright sands of the beach faded from his mind. As Zach's relentless march continued, he basked in the sounds of the angelic voice dancing on the winds. The voice grew louder and louder as he continued his journey deeper into the woods. Yet no matter how much closer he became, the words never did become more clear. Zach had no sense of how long he had been treading through the undergrowth. Blisters formed and ruptured on his swelling feet. Cuts gouged deep and bled across his entire body, formed as he absent-mindedly wandered through the branches and boulders. Zach's march continued until long after the sun had been replaced by the moon. Yet his pace never slowed. He continued following the invisible trail laid out for him by the angelic summons of the voice. Many hours after his journey began, at long last, Zach breached out of the dark forest. Stepping out and away from the forest, Zach found himself standing upon yet another beach. The beach was almost normal, yet it was not quite right. The majority of the details were correct. The finer ones were just ever so slightly off. as if the beach itself had found itself within the uncanny valley. Suspended high in the sky was a massive crimson moon, far larger than the moon should ever be. Its visage stretches from one edge of the world to the other. The endless ocean's glass-like form reflects every minute detail of the moon. Every crack, crag, and crater upon its surface shone as a stunning doppelganger within the water. The sands that the glassed-over water abruptly met were just as odd as the rest of the world itself. Black sands, but pristine and undisturbed, reflecting no light back from the moon at all, a void of life and light itself. The only form juxtaposed to the pristine, empty beach was a singular figure, human in its appearance, yet just as much not so. The details of its outline writhing and shifting in the light cast from the crimson moon. The angelic voice that brought Zack on his pilgrimage to this alien landscape flowed out from the figure. The angelic song continued to grind away at Zack's will, beckoning him ever closer. The voice grew louder and reached octaves it had never before. As the voice rose, an overwhelming feeling of warmth, safety, and comfort likewise rose within his chest. Zack stepped forward towards the figure, confidence within his stride, assured by the feeling of trust within his heart. The creature meant him no harm. As his feet dug into the black sands, he could feel the coarse crystals grinding deep into his mangled feet. The feeling of pain from this lasted only mere moments, as the frigid temperatures of the sand sapped all feeling from his feet. The skin, a mix of blood and red abrasions, and a ghastly white. As he continues to approach the figure, it turned around in a flowing, graceful manner that matched only the gentle sounds of its motherly voice. At this closer distance, the details of the figure became more clear. Its entire body is a mass of writhing tentacles, as black as the sand Zack walks upon. The flowing tendrils are shaped roughly into the curves and long flowing legs of a buxom woman. The figure took its arms and slowly raised them in Zack's direction. The voice continued to rise louder and louder as he quickened his pace. His mind was assured of some inherent need to be found once he reached her embrace. Zack's muscles began to scream in pain at him when he forced his legs to run faster in the shifting sands of the beach. His heartbeat drummed in his ears, keeping time with his ragged breath. As Zack neared the figure's warm embrace, at long last his salvation was at hand. Zack yelped as he found himself collapsing into the ice-cold sands. His arms now torn open and bleeding profusely, lacerated by the glass-like grit. He pushed that out of his mind and attempted to pull himself up to his knees. He found his legs did not respond to his commands as they had moments ago. Instead, a sharp pain accompanied by a grinding noise began to erupt from his ankles. Attempting to kick and thrash even harder, in a desperate attempt to reach the figure, a last-ditch effort to be sheltered in its maternal embrace. His arms and torso being lacerated by the obsidian sands as he continued to struggle to move. The pain in his ankle stopped for a brief moment, only for the sharp pain to return, now running up his entire leg and not just his ankles. Panic began to replace that feeling of safety. Looking back to see what was causing his pain, he began to scream, his entire body vibrating from the noise as his howls drowned out the angelic voice next to him. Protruding from the black void of the sands alongside his legs were skeletal snakes. The white of their bones stained a deep crimson red in the light of the eldritch moon. Their long fangs pierced deep into Zack's skin. he could see more snakes writhe from the ground and begin to burrow into his skin. The snakes began worming their way deeper and deeper into his flesh. He felt them beginning to coil around his bones. The coils slowly but surely were tightening. Zack desperately looked around for anything he could use to strike at the snakes. When he found nothing within reach, he began to slam his fist into the skull of the one locked around his ankle. His strikes did not bother the creature even as he hit it so hard that blood flowed from his rupturing knuckles. As he pulled his fist back to strike again, another viper burst from the ground, latching itself onto his hand, his arm swiftly being slammed into the ground. He attempted to reach for this new viper, yet on his other arm he felt cold fangs dig into his wrist and pull his arm away. His limbs were swiftly pulled out and away from his body, as though the snakes were attempting to draw and quarter him. Zack felt more of the snakes burrowing up from the cold sand, digging their way into his flesh from all angles. They burrowed throughout him, writhing inside his chest, coiling around every bone in his body. To his horror, he could see the shadow of one of the snake's tongues flick and flitter across his vision. Zack felt the pressure on his limbs grow, both from the coiling upon his bones and the tugging at his joints. Slowly, one by one, Zack felt his joints dislocate, each giving off a dull pop as they did. Next came the pressure of the coils, slowly increasing. He began to feel shooting pains as cracks began to form, until all at once every bone in his body shattered like porcelain. The pain was the worst thing Zack could have ever imagined. His constant screaming through however long this horrendous torture had gone on for caused his throat to bleed, the taste of blood pooling in his mouth. Zack had begun to cry, tears pouring out of his eyes, hoping with all his will that his torment was over. Through all the pain and the torment he had just endured, the figure still stood over him, speaking in that soothing, motherly voice. He struggled to look up towards the figure, the crunching and grinding of his bones only causing his sobs to grow more in fervor. He tried to say to the figure, "Please help me," but all that escaped his mouth was a crackling whine. The figure reacted to his gasping whine. It stopped speaking. The figure knelt down and cupped Zack's jaw in its hands. He felt overwhelming love. He thought he would. A care he had never felt before in his life. He felt that care for but a few brief moments before the vipers began to drag Zack down underneath the sands. The figure stood back up and watched him as the creatures slowly pulled him down into the depths below. Thank you everyone for listening to Chapter 1 of Interloper, Black Shores. If you enjoyed today's story, please leave a like and comment as to what you thought. Additionally, if you are feeling incredibly generous, I would appreciate it if you would travel to my Reddit for this story and also leave it an upvote, as it helps me gain traction within the communities. Anyone who feels as though that my writing was good enough that it deserves something additional may also make a small donation on my Ko-fi. Anyone who donates there shall get access to all of my stories 1 week early in written form. I am unsure if I will make them audio form 1 week early as well. We shall see. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate you all.